It's exactly 10 a.m. The courtroom is literally packed to the brim. You've got journalists, flashing cameras, and just this heavy, tense whispering from a city that's waiting with bated breath for a verdict. We're talking about the biggest, most talked about murder case of the year. Sitting right there at the defense table is Michael Carter. He's this wildly popular university professor, but right now, he is accused of murdering a college student named Emma Collins. And let me tell you, the public is absolutely certain he did it. I mean, all the evidence points directly at him, and the anger in that room is just palpable. But amidst all this chaos, Michael is sitting there, totally alone, offering just one chillingly unwavering plea: I'm innocent.
So, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying case of the state versus Michael Carter. We're going to look at how what seemed like an open and shut murder case, a case that had an entire city utterly convinced, completely unraveled right in the middle of a courtroom. It's an absolute masterclass in why we really need to look beneath the surface.
Which brings us to a really wild question. How does an innocent man become the victim of perfect evidence? I know, it sounds like a total paradox, right? Evidence is supposed to be the ultimate truth. It's what we literally rely on for justice. But the sequence of events here forces us to completely deconstruct the idea of a manufactured truth. Basically, what actually happens when the evidence against you is, well, just a little too perfect.
Let's get into Section 1, Airtight Evidence, and take a look at the prosecution's case.
During the trial, the prosecution laid out a narrative that felt, honestly, inescapable. The judge was stern, the jury was nodding along, and Michael Carter looked like he was for sure headed for a life behind bars. To anyone looking at the facts, his guilt wasn't just possible, it was an absolute certainty. And why wouldn't they think that? They had three massive pieces of evidence that stacked up to create this perfect illusion of guilt. First up, clear CCTV footage showing Emma getting into Michael's car on the night of the murder. Second, phone records proving Emma's final phone call went directly to Michael. And third, a solid eyewitness who swore they saw an intense, heated argument between the two of them that exact same night. I mean, the prosecution built a completely flawless narrative.
But then we hit Section 2, an unexpected witness. This is where everything turns on its head. Just as the gavel was practically coming down to seal Michael's fate, his defense lawyer absolutely shocked the room. He literally halts the proceedings and asks to call a brand new witness. The entire room just goes dead silent. The heavy wooden doors open up, and in walks this completely random delivery driver named Ethan Brooks. Nobody, not the jury, not the press, not the prosecution, has any clue who this guy is. So Ethan takes the stand, super calm, and explains he was out delivering food in the area on the night of the murder. He confirms, yes, he saw Emma, but then he drops an absolute bombshell. He says she wasn't alone, she was with someone else. You could hear a pin drop. Now, the prosecutor, being super confident in his airtight case, naturally assumes the someone else is Michael Carter. So he asks Ethan directly, "Did you see Michael Carter?" And Ethan just shakes his head and says, "No."
Now, you have to appreciate the incredible, dramatic irony of what happens next. The prosecutor demands to know exactly who Ethan saw. Ethan slowly raises his hand and points to the back of the courtroom, directly at Ryan Mitchell, Emma's boyfriend. Now, to the public, Ryan was this poor, grieving boyfriend who had been crying to the media, calling Michael a monster. He was totally beyond suspicion. But in literal seconds, he transforms from the grieving partner into the prime suspect. The tension in that room was absolutely off the charts.
Which brings us to Section 3, Manipulation Behind Evidence. Let's follow the digital trail. So, shifting from this intense courtroom drama to a fast-paced forensic breakdown, the police realize, oh wow, we've been looking at the wrong guy this whole time, and they're forced to completely reinvestigate the digital trail from scratch. And what they find is actually super disturbing. 4. That's the magic number that broke this case wide open. When investigators took a second, much closer look at that condemning CCTV footage, they found a huge anomaly. There was a precise, highly intentional 4-minute deletion in the videotape. It was cut exactly at the moment where Emma's car should have been visible on the street. This wasn't a glitch, you guys. It wasn't some random technical error. It was a deliberate, surgical manipulation of the truth.
And that completely changes the reality of what happened. Here is the actual timeline investigators pieced together. First, earlier that night, the real argument and the murder take place. Second, a bit later, that 4-minute CCTV gap is deliberately created to hide the real culprit's presence.
And third, and honestly, this is the most chilling part of the whole shebang, that final phone call to Michael, it was placed post-mortem. Yeah, it was made after Emma was already dead. Ryan tampered with the entire sequence of events just to make the evidence point entirely away from himself and squarely onto the professor.
Moving on to Section 4, a perfect trap. Let's look at the architect of this deception.
Now you might be wondering, how on earth does a supposedly grieving boyfriend pull off flawlessly altering digital evidence and manipulating a crime scene? Well, it turns out Ryan used to work at a security company. He wasn't just an angry boyfriend, he had the exact technical expertise needed to understand CCTV systems, blind spots, digital footprints, the whole 9 yards. Once you know that, the anatomy of his frame-up becomes terrifyingly clear. Step 1. The confrontation happens and Ryan murders Emma. Step 2. Using that security background, he hacks into the system and seamlessly deletes those 4 minutes of crucial footage to erase himself from the narrative. Step 3. He takes Emma's phone and makes a fake final call to Michael, practically gift-wrapping the professor for the police. He literally weaponized the digital evidence to create a totally alternate reality.
And that leads us to Section 5, the real truth and a fatal discovery.
So, why did this happen in the first place? Why did Emma have to die? Well, the dark motive finally surfaced. It turns out Emma had actually discovered Ryan's violent past, and she met up with him that very night to end the relationship for good. Ryan just couldn't handle the rejection or the fear of being exposed. A massive argument broke out, and his violent tendencies escalated into murder. Back in the courtroom, as this horrific, newly discovered truth is laid out for the judge and jury, Ryan's demeanor completely flips. That whole grieving boyfriend act, poof, totally vanished. He's just standing there smirking as he realizes his carefully constructed false reality has finally collapsed. In this incredibly chilling moment, he just mutters, "I almost got away with it." Meanwhile, Michael Carter is sitting quietly across the room, realizing just how terrifyingly close he came to doing life for a crime he didn't commit, all because of a perfectly orchestrated lie.
The most dangerous killer isn't the one who takes a life. The most dangerous is the one who can manipulate the truth to their own design. This is the absolute biggest takeaway from our explainer today. We usually just inherently trust what we can see, right? The digital footprints, the cold hard data. But this case is a massive wake-up call about the terrifying power of manipulated evidence. Who is actually pulling the strings behind the facts you see presented as absolute truth? It's kind of a dark thought to leave you with, but an absolutely crucial one in our digital age. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Stay curious out there and always, always question the narrative.